Cameras were live. Julia Roberts was mid-sentence. And then a voice from the back of the studio changed everything. Jimmy Fallon was having the kind of night every talk show host dreams about. Julia Roberts, America's sweetheart, Oscar winner, genuine movie royalty, was sitting across from him in the guest chair, radiant in an elegant dress, telling a hilarious story about her latest film. The audience was eating it up. The Roots were grooving softly in the background. The energy was perfect. Jimmy leaned forward, his trademark enthusiasm lighting up his face. "So when you realized the scene wasn't working, what did you?" He never finished the question. A voice called out from somewhere near the studio entrance. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just there. A single word that seemed to cut through every other sound in the room. "Jules!" Julia Roberts stopped mid-sentence. Her smile vanished instantly. Her head whipped toward the back of the studio so fast it startled Jimmy. Her hand flew to her mouth, the other gripping the armrest of her chair with white-knuckled intensity. Jimmy's hands froze mid-gesture, his question hanging incomplete in the air. His face shifted from animated host to genuine confusion in a heartbeat. "Julia? What's wrong?" She didn't answer. She was staring at something, or someone, that the cameras couldn't see yet. Her eyes had gone wide, filling rapidly with tears that caught the studio lights. The audience fell silent. That special kind of silence that happens when 300 people simultaneously realize something real is happening. Cameras were live when a voice rose from the back of the studio, and Julia Roberts' face completely changed. Jimmy Fallon froze, trying to understand what was happening. The control room erupted. Director Dave Diamadi was shouting into his headset. "What's happening? Did someone get past security? Camera 4, can you see who that is? Do we cut? Do we go to commercial?" Producer Gerard Bradford stood behind Dave, hand on his shoulder, staring at the monitor showing Julia's face. "No," Gerard said quietly. "Keep rolling. Look at her face. This is real." Jimmy had stood up from his desk, still completely lost. "Julia, seriously, are you okay? Do we need to?" Julia raised one hand, silencing him gently. She was still staring toward the back of the studio, tears now streaming freely down her face, ruining her professionally applied makeup. She stood up slowly, almost shakily, from the guest chair. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. That voice. I know that voice." Jimmy looked toward the back of the studio, then back at Julia, then at the audience, then at Questlove, who had lowered his drumsticks and was watching with everyone else, equally confused. "Whose voice?" Jimmy asked, his tone shifting from host to concerned friend. "Julia, what's going on?" She took one step forward, away from the desk, toward the studio entrance. "That's—" She stopped, composing herself, wiping tears with the back of her hand. "That's my drama teacher. From high school. Mr. Thomas Fletcher. I haven't seen him in 32 years. Jimmy stopped mid-joke. The entire studio froze. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened in 1985. Julia Roberts wasn't always Julia Roberts, global superstar and beloved actress. In 1985, she was 17-year-old Julie Fiona Roberts, a shy girl at Campbell High School in Smyrna, Georgia, struggling to figure out who she was and what she wanted from life. She was the younger sister of Eric Roberts, who was already making waves as an actor in Hollywood. Everyone assumed Julia would follow in her brother's footsteps. Family legacy. Natural talent. It seemed inevitable. But Julia was terrified of performing. She'd freeze up at the thought of auditions. She'd get physically sick before school plays. The idea of standing in front of people and being vulnerable, being seen, made her want to disappear. Her parents had divorced when she was young. Her father had died of cancer when she was 10. Her mother worked multiple jobs to keep the family afloat. Julia felt like a burden, like asking for acting classes or pursuing a dream as impractical as Hollywood was selfish when her family was barely getting by. She decided quietly that she would graduate high school, get a practical job, maybe go to community college for business or nursing, something stable, something that wouldn't require being in the spotlight. And then she met Thomas Fletcher. Mr. Fletcher was Campbell High's drama teacher. Mid-40s, rumpled suits, coffee-stained ties, the kind of teacher who genuinely loved what he did despite the terrible pay and indifferent administration. He'd been a theater actor in New York for 15 years before a family emergency brought him back to Georgia, and he never left. He saw something in Julia Roberts that she didn't see in herself. It started small. He asked her to help backstage with the fall production of Our Town. Just painting sets, managing props, nothing that required being on stage. Julia agreed, grateful for something to do after school that didn't involve going home to an empty apartment. She was good at it. Meticulous. Organized. She showed up early and stayed late. She watched the rehearsals from the wings, studying the actors, the way they inhabited characters, the way they transformed into someone else under the lights. One afternoon, 3 weeks before opening night, the lead actress, a senior named Michelle who had the role of Emily, got mono and had to drop out. Mr. Fletcher called an emergency meeting of the drama club. They needed a replacement. Fast. Someone who knew the blocking because they'd been watching rehearsals. Someone who could learn lines quickly. His eyes landed on Julia, sitting in the back of the theater, trying to make herself invisible. "Julie," he said, using the nickname only her close friends and family used. "I need you to do this." She shook her head violently. "No. No way. I can't. I'll throw up. I'll forget every line. I can't perform in front of people." Mr. Fletcher walked down the aisle and sat in the seat next to her. "You've been watching every rehearsal. You know Emily better than Michelle did. You mouth the lines when you're painting sets. Yeah, I've noticed. You're already performing. You're just doing it where no one can see you. Because that's where I belong," Julia said, tears in her eyes. "Backstage. Not in front. Why? Because I'm not good enough. Because people will see me and realize I'm just Eric's little sister trying to be something she's not." Mr. Fletcher leaned back in his seat, considering. "You know what I did before I came here? I was in a production of Death of a Salesman in New York. Small theater, off Broadway, barely anyone came. But I loved it. Every night, I got to be Willie Loman. Every night, I got to transform into someone else and tell his story. And you know what I learned?" Julia shook her head. "Acting isn't about being someone else. It's about finding the truth inside yourself and letting other people see it. Emily isn't you. But the things Emily feels, love, loss, regret, hope, those things are you. And if you let people see that, really see it, you'll do more than perform. You'll connect." Julia looked at him, terrified. "What if I fail?" "Then you fail," Mr. Fletcher said simply. "And I'll be there in the wings. And we'll try again tomorrow. But Julie, what if you don't fail? What if you discover that the thing you've been running from is exactly what you're supposed to do?" She did the play. She was terrified the entire first act. She forgot a line and had to improvise. She nearly tripped over a set piece. And then, in Act 3, during Emily's final monologue, the heartbreaking scene where she realizes you can never go back, that life moves forward whether you're ready or not, something happened. Julia stopped being a scared 17-year-old. She became Emily. And when she delivered that final line, when she whispered, "Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it?" there wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium, including Mr. Fletcher's. After the final curtain, he found her backstage, still shaking from adrenaline and fear and joy all mixed together. "That," he said, "is who you are, Julie. That right there. Don't you ever forget it." She graduated 2 months later. She moved to New York to pursue acting, terrified but determined. Mr. Fletcher wrote her a letter of recommendation for acting programs. He told her she was going to make it, that he knew it the same way he knew the sun would rise. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Julia Roberts never forgot Thomas Fletcher. But as her career exploded, as she became Julia Roberts, movie star, she lost touch with everyone from her high school years. It happens. Life moves fast. You get busy. You tell yourself you'll reconnect later. And then later never comes. She'd looked for him over the years. She tried to find Campbell High's drama program to donate money, to give back, but the program had been cut in the 1990s due to budget issues. Mr. Fletcher had retired. Moved somewhere. She couldn't find an address. Couldn't find a phone number. For 32 years she'd carried the guilt of never thanking him properly. Never telling him that everything she'd become started in that moment, when he saw something in her that she couldn't see in herself. And now, impossibly, his voice had just called out her old nickname in the middle of a Tonight Show interview. Behind the scenes, Fallon made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. Julia was walking toward the back of the studio now, moving past the audience section, her heels clicking on the floor, tears still streaming. Jimmy followed her without thinking, abandoning his desk, the interview, the script, everything. The cameras scrambled to keep up. Near the studio entrance, partially hidden behind a production assistant, stood an elderly man in his 70s. Thin. Gray hair. Wearing a cardigan that had seen better days. But his eyes were bright and clear and full of recognition. Thomas Fletcher. Julia stopped 5 feet away from him, one hand still covering her mouth, completely overcome. "Jules," he said again, his voice gentle, exactly as she remembered. "Look at you. I knew you'd make it. I always knew." She couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. Jimmy stood a few feet behind her, giving her space but close enough to help if needed. He looked at the production staff. "How did he?" A PA named Sarah stepped forward, looking terrified she might have caused a disaster. "He came to the stage door before the show. He said he was Julia's high school teacher. He said he just wanted to leave her a note, but when I told security, they thought maybe she'd want to know he was here. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize," Jimmy said quietly, watching Julia and Mr. Fletcher. "You did exactly the right thing." Julia finally found her voice. How are you here?" "I looked for you. I tried to find you." Mr. Fletcher smiled, that same warm smile from 3 decades ago. "I know. Your assistant found me 6 months ago. She's been trying to set up a meeting, but I kept canceling. I didn't want to be a distraction. Didn't want you to feel obligated to see an old teacher. But tonight I was watching your interview from my apartment, and I thought, Thomas, stop being a coward. So I got in my car and I drove here and I asked if I could I just wanted to tell you something." "What?" "I'm proud of you, Julie. Not because you're famous. Not because you won awards. I'm proud because you took that fear you had, that terror of being seen, and you turned it into your strength. You let millions of people see the truth inside you. That's what I always knew you could do. But this is the moment no one in the studio, and no one watching at home, ever saw coming." Julia crossed the distance between them and threw her arms around Thomas Fletcher, sobbing into his shoulder like the 17-year-old girl she'd once been. He held her gently, patting her back, whispering, "It's okay, Jules. I'm here. I'm so proud of you." The audience rose to their feet. Not the polite applause of entertainment. The thunderous, cathartic applause of people witnessing something sacred. Jimmy stood beside them, tears streaming down his face. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his blue cue cards, the cards he used for every interview, covered in his handwriting. "Mr. Fletcher," Jimmy said, his voice thick with emotion, "I want you to have these. Write down everything you want to tell her. Everything you've been saving for 32 years. Don't let those words get lost again." Mr. Fletcher took the cards with trembling hands. Julia pulled back, wiping her eyes, laughing through tears. You drove here? Tonight? I couldn't wait another day, he said simply. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The show didn't continue normally. Jimmy brought them both onto the stage, gave them chairs, and for 20 minutes, America watched a student and her teacher reconnect. Mr. Fletcher stayed for the rest of the taping. He sits front row at every Julia Roberts movie premiere now. The cue cards? Julia had them framed. They hang in her home office. On them, in Mr. Fletcher's handwriting, are 3 words. You made it, Jules.